And here we are back with our friend Greg DeMarco, and Greg has a new background, and so do I actually. As we're recording this, he's reminding me. He says, he says you don't have that virtual background up, and all I got is a green screen up behind me, but I will be changing it. So um,
That's insignificant, Don. I mean, it's already there. People see it. Whatever.
yeah, yeah. Well, no, they won't see it when we're done. But anyway, we're back, and Greg is visiting a friend in New Mexico, and that's why he has that beautiful terracotta color background in behind him. He's in Albuquerque, New Mexico
I
for
am.
a week. So yeah. So how's your week been, Greg? What's up? What's new?
Hey, listen. It's been a great week. I haven't wanted to do really anything but relax and see the sights, and it's definitely drier here. It's nice and warm. Cool evenings, hot days. What can you complain about? It's just a beautiful background of mountains, desert, tumbleweeds, some red colors, some brown colors. It's all good.
Yeah, New Mexico is known for their hot air ballooning.
Ah,
So you might want to. I'm not sure what time of the year that they do that. They actually have a big hot air balloon festival. Where they let off about I don't know, about 100, 200 of these hot air balloons that go up and all at one time, and they all got special designs, and some of them have special shapes and stuff like that. It's
no,
it's quite interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, when we were part of Remax, of course, Remax, one of their logos is the hot air balloon, and they actually have a fleet of hot air balloons that you could rent and stuff like that. But they've entered that thing over there. So anyway, you might want to check it out. See if you can see any hot air balloons. Might be
Yeah,
something to
well,
do.
we're gonna do a little Sandia tram. We're gonna go up the mountain and see things from there. There's a few things we got planned, but yeah, it's definitely beautiful down here. I can understand why you like it so much.
Yeah, you know one of the things you're going to have to be aware of is you're going up to the top of a mountain. The air is a little bit rarefied up there, and
Rarefied. That's a good word.
rarefied air. I like where we go when we go to New Mexico is north of where you are, and the elevation is about 7,000 feet.
Yeah.
So that's about a mile high, and then from there, then the Sonia's cousins would take us on some trams, go on the forest trails and stuff, and we go up to this ranch, this big ranch. It's not really a ranch, but it's where they would have their cattle, and it's at about 11,000 feet. So for for a coastal person like myself, that 11,000 feet, all of a sudden you're in, you start trying to breathe. You do a little exercise and you're sucking wind, sucking wind big
Yeah,
time. So it's
I was warned about that. We the last couple of days we've been pretty tired because we're at about 6,000 or 6,500 feet or
yeah,
something.
you're pretty high there too.
Yeah,
So but just be aware that you're in rarefied air.
rarefied
So
air. I'm gonna go up and
yeah,
impress my girlfriend on that one.
yeah. Well, there you go. There you go. I'm glad I could
You
help.
know,
I know
Don,
you need all the help you can get.
I know it's just wonderful being with you because I learned so much.
All right.
Let's get going here
Enough of
before we.
this.
Yeah, enough of this. The
Yeah.
hitter.
Well, we've
Let's
been
see.
talking. We've been talking about the John Maxwell's book. Everyone communicates, few connect, and we must have been breathing rarefied air. The last time we did this because we skipped a chapter. So we're going to admit that freely that we skipped a chapter, and we beg your apologies for doing that. And we're going to go back to chapter 3, which is connecting goes beyond words. And I think, you know, connection, you think about it, when we connect with people, when we're in sales, we think it's all about talking to them, but it goes way beyond just those words, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny that we missed this chapter, but it's a very significant one because it's supposed to really be about focusing on others, right? And that's the whole point about connecting. It's a very significant part of connecting, because if you can't put others ahead of you and focus on them, how are you supposed to connect at all, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, why would they want to connect with you if you're only focused on yourself?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and
How
and
many times in our own lives when we're trying to build relationships, and then you find that one person that just seems to always want to talk about themselves, you know, and you don't really want to be around those people for too long. Let's face the
yeah,
facts. I mean, that's true.
yeah, and you don't want to be that person either, right?
No, no, but you have to have a certain amount of awareness to sort of see that, right?
Yeah. So effective communicators, they're going to engage in all aspects of communication. We communicate verbally. We communicate by talking. And we also communicate by our visual actions. So people are watching us. I mean, we hope people are watching us, but people are watching us, and we're communicating something to them. What are we communicating to others as they watch this video? And what and but it's more important than when we're in person. What are we communicating to each other when we're talking to each other? Like, are we showing people that we care about them, that we genuinely respect who they are? And I think that's an important thing for us to consider.
Well, I think what you just hit on there is significant enough to point out that, you know, what for them, what are their needs, their desires, their interests. We've got to put all that first. And I think it is a certain amount of respect that we need to show, which I think people feel more comfortable when you genuinely see them and hear them and listen to what they're saying. That goes a long way. I can tell you from my experience, uh, the best connections that I've ever made in my life are when I'm engaged, looking at people in their eyes, talking, asking them questions about them. One of the things I used to say in sales, for example, because this all comes back to, I mean, we're here to help people in sales. And if we sort of stay on that side of it, one of the things I used to do, which always worked very well for me, so that they would remember who I was and that I was engaged with them, I'd say at the very end of it, I'm very grateful for you coming in today. I really appreciate the fact that you made the effort to come down here and speak with me today. That goes a long way for me. And I used to probably have more what we call B backs in the business, more people coming back and remembering me or asking for me just because of that. Because I would gauge what I was saying to people. What's working best? Do I just say, hey, thanks for coming? We'll talk to you later. Or is it, hey, looking at them in the eyes and saying, I'm very grateful for you coming in today. And I do appreciate you spending time with me. I think that's really important.
Well, when you do that, I think you're making it about them. You're not making it about you. And sometimes in sales, um, we're interested. We want to make the sale, right?
Yeah.
But we got to recognize that people, the people might not need to make that sale today. They might need something else. So how do we fulfill their needs? How do we get to their needs? Um, you mentioned looking at people in the eye, and I was I was doing. Have you ever talked to somebody where all they did was look at you in the eye? I mean, it could be that could be a little intimidating too. And I think that eye contact is important. But I was actually taking a course a couple weeks ago on improving the way that we speak. Improving, like, it was on presentation, how to be a better presenter. And one of the things they talked about was how to have eye contact. And they gave a rule of thumb, that rule of thumb, probably about 70% of the time you should be looking at the person in the eye. Now, for sometimes it's hard for me because I got that one wonky eye that goes, points off into wherever it wants to go sometimes. So people don't know how to look me in the eye. they I've had actually people say, okay, I know you got a weird eye, but which eye am I supposed to look at, kind of thing.
let's
So
let's just get it clear right now. Which one am I supposed to look at?
yeah, but I mean, it does make a difference, right? So, but one of the things I found interesting is that what they said was that if you have trouble looking at a person in the eye, look at try looking right at their forehead, right there, right? So, it's a just a it looks like you're still looking them in the eye, but
Well,
it's
it's significant enough that you got to pay attention,
yeah,
and
no,
let's when someone's engaged with you when you're looking at them right in the eyes instead of like looking over here, up there, and all around, right?
yeah, yeah. My wife gets very angry at me when she's talking to me and I'm not looking at her.
Yeah, well, I can understand that.
Fortunately, yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I don't do. I guess, and with our important relationships, we should remember that kind of thing more than with a casual relationship. But it is very important that we do that. You know, thinking about looking at people in the eye, that's something that's a visual, thing that we do. But we also have, the tone of our voice. When we're speaking to somebody, what's our tone of voice? Because um, you and I both know probably from our childhood that the tone of voice that your mother used when you knew you were in trouble.
Oh, I have no
At least
idea.
I, yeah, I bet. I knew when I was in trouble. My mother would use all three of my names. When she was calling me, and I knew that I was in trouble. So the tone of voice is very effective in our communication. So when we're speaking to somebody, do we modify the way that we speak? Do we talk too fast? How do we speak? How are we to be more effective by paying attention to how are we to be more effective by paying attention to our voice and the inflection that we put in our tone and the speed of which we talk.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this comes down to how we understand the needs of others, because it's not there's a tonality about it, as you say. You don't want to come off monotone, but you want to come off with some enthusiasm as to that's how you show somebody you're interested in them. you know it's essential to understanding what they want too, because the more associated with them you are, the more you get out of the experience. And it all comes down to, and Maxwell has talked about this 100 million times, about intentionality. What are your intentions? And it involves what we call active listening and
Yeah,
emphasizing with their perspective. Where are they coming from? The more questions you ask, the more engaged you are, the more of a perspective you get from them. And it just helps build what we all know is really important, is trust. Because that's where we're trying to get at, is trust. Like, how can I understand this person? Well, you can't understand them if you don't get some kind of level of trust.
yeah, yeah, and they have to be willing to. You have to have that trust in order to get to really what their true needs are, because they
Absolutely.
will sometimes they sometimes will people we don't always open right up and tell somebody what we need right away. I mean, it depends on what you're buying, or it depends on what the purpose of your conversation is all about. But we don't always just immediately blurt out what it is we need or what we think we need. So
Well, it's because people don't like being vulnerable. And when, especially if they're talking to, it's a slightly different if you're just talking to someone to get to know them. But when you're in sales, everybody has their defenses up. You have to understand this about human nature. There's a level of vulnerability that really affects how open someone's going to be with you. So that's the problem, is you have to get through that barrier, and so they feel less vulnerable and more open to saying what that's really on their mind. And a lot of this is what you've just said. It's mood. You set the mood. You set the tone. How do you speak with them? The tonality, the body language, how you look in their eyes, or if you don't look in their eyes.
Yeah.
All of that plays a huge part. Most people don't. I don't think that, there's always these techniques that are discussed in sales and stuff about tonality, body language, and they give you percentages of really what it is that, it's not so much what you say, it's how you say it and all. Well, there are very significant parts to that that require you to be efficient at in order to get that trust level and that vulnerability, the feeling of vulnerability down. You know,
Yeah, it's all about, when we're connecting, it's about building that trust so that we connect on an emotional level,
you got
as
it.
well as we connect at an emotional level as well as the intellectual one. We want them to intellectually make a good decision, that is beneficial to them, and hopefully beneficial to us as well as salespeople. But I think, you briefly touched on our body language as well. But we can say a lot with the way we hold our body,
Hmm.
when we're talking to somebody, right? I always think, when I think about body language, I think about that sign in Seinfeld, the TV show where Kramer meets the close talker, and
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
like it's just like, like the guy's right in front of, Kramer, and he can't get away from him, right? So
yeah.
it's how far away should you stand when you're talking to somebody? How close can you go? Like we have our personal space, so how close do you actually get to somebody? And a lot said, and that's a lot to be said, their body language. So and you always, I think you've been in sales a long time, so you probably heard the thing where you mirror what somebody's doing. If you're talking to somebody and they go like this, then you should go like that, and you makes them comfortable. Or if you go like this, you're giving a different approach, or that kind of thing. But if you're open handed, or you're closed fisted, what different things, that can say different things to people. I mean, not outright, but there's all these little things that you learn. But ultimately, it's how are you going to present yourself as a friendly, open person?
Well, and I think, like, you hit on a couple of really important points there that we need to circle back on. One is with regards to people, is the emotional side, because that's what we're trying to do. And I've mentioned this on this show a couple of times, and I think you'll agree with me. There's that lady Maya Angelou who made that quote. It's not what people say or what they do; it's how they make you feel. And there's that emotional side. It's how they make you feel that makes the biggest difference. And if we look at all the significant things in our lives that have shaped our lives with other people, whether they are good shapes or bad shapes, it all has to do with how they made you feel in the end. And it's
Yeah,
that's what you remember, is the feeling. So if you and I think she's bang on. I think that's a very significant quote for people to write down. And I think that's what happens. It's the emotional side. So if you look at that, you say, how do we hit that emotional side of people? How can they remember me? How do I stand out? And it's not about me. I'm just saying, if I'm a salesperson, how do I stand out? And one of the biggest things is adding value to them. So you're not only getting to know them, but you're adding value to their life. You know,
yeah,
it's critical. It's a critical component to connecting. Focusing on how, like, you can help or serve them. It just builds a stronger and more meaningful relationship.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Uh,
so
have you ever had a time where your body language or the way you said something undermined your presentation at all? Or can you
yeah,
think of something,
when I
mistake you made?
lost, yeah, when I lost a sale because
Yeah.
of
Would
being nervous or not getting the point or being distracted or something like that, and then you shift. Like, it really is an important part of connecting with people, because if you shift a certain way, like, it's how you feel, right? So if you start to feel nervous, or you weren't listening and they asked you a question and your brain was off somewhere else.
Excuse me.
And then you go
Oh,
like,
that's never happened to me.
yeah, yeah, or
That's
there you go. Then you go like this. Well, what was that again? Then they kind of look at you like, yeah, there's no connection here. Yeah, we're done. So,
yeah.
like, yeah,
No,
it's happened. I'm not perfect by any means. Has it happened to you?
yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah, I don't remember the specifics of it, but I know there's been times when I was when somebody's talking about something or you're doing something and like showing a house and they're off talking together and you're supposed to be following them, but you're thinking about the hockey game you watched last night or that you're going to watch tonight or something else, and then all of a sudden they ask you a question, you say,
Yeah,
no,
you're
missed
off in
that,
la la land.
and I mean that's that's a bad thing, right? I mean, I'm not proud that I've done that. We can joke about it, but really, when I'm with somebody, when if I'm trying to help them make a decision, I need to be recognized that that's an important moment in their life, and that I need to be present at that time for them. And when I'm not, then I've made a mistake, and you know, I I can lose a commission as a result of it. So,
Yeah,
and I can, in some cases you can lose a friend or not make a friend, type of
yeah.
thing. So,
No, that's right. It's a significant part of it, but we have to always, I think, be in the mode of demonstrating like care and respect. And you had mentioned that earlier, and uh, it's important because that's how we sort of gauge our connectability to others. Is, are they respecting me, or do they even care about what the heck it is I need or want? And in sales, that's your lifeline right there.
yeah,
You know.
you know, um, we've talked a little bit in the past as well about personality styles,
Yep.
but being aware, I think, of a person's personality style is also something that can help us be a better communicator, because that can depend on how much information we give to somebody, or it also can. I remember, um, like the C type of personality, the conscientious one or the compliant one. They will ask a lot of questions. So sometimes when people ask a lot of questions, you think, well, they're you know they're they don't trust me, or they're looking for something or whatever. But the C type of personality needs to ask those questions in order to feel fulfilled, in order to feel like they've made a good decision. They want that information. So you have to recognize that they want that information. Or the D type of personality, they're the direct person. They don't want all the information. They want you to give them options. But recognizing that person's personality style, I think, helps you in communicating with them. I've been going through some different things, and we talk about building rapport, and so I have a cheat sheet, sort of thing on when you're building rapport with a D style. It says, to head off the D's impatience before it surfaces, keep your conversations interesting by alternately asking questions and offering relevant information. D's need to view the meeting as purposeful, so they want to understand where your questions are leading. And then, it has it for all different types. But I think that those are important things for us to be aware of when we're dealing with people in a business environment, which is what sales is. I mean, it can be a casual type of an environment, but it can be business like as well. If we want to truly fulfill a good service to our client.
Well, here's a good plug for you, Don, because you and I have talked about this so many times, and you do all this personality assessment stuff and understanding, teaching people. It's a significant part of teaching people how to identify what motivates certain personality types. So I've told you this before, and I'll say it again in this session. My career took a change to the top when I learned about different personality types back in about 2004 and 5. And it was the disc profiling that I was doing. But when I started to understand these types of personalities, and more significantly, understand the what motivates them, I knew what to say and what to avoid when I was able to identify who these people were. And for you being able to teach this, it's not rocket science and it's not like something you can't understand. It's very easy once you do identify the four groups. And then how you talk to them, which is basically just catering to their motivational, like what motivates them or what stimulates them and what doesn't stimulate them. Then you master a certain skill in sales that gives you a significant uh, path ahead of everyone else if you can do that. And for me, my sales changed 50%.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for the plug.
Yeah, no, it's significant. You do a great job of understanding that for people and working out how they can learn it. So
Yeah. I think it's important, and I think it's important for us to be able to gauge, what level of enthusiasm and energy, should we have in our conversation with somebody. Some people don't want you to be enthusiastic and excited about stuff. Some people would rather be, more laid back. So, but we need to recognize those things.
well, and I can tell you a quick story. When I was in the boat business, for example, I remember the very first boat show I did. And I was so worried I wasn't going to sell any boats. And yep, for that first weekend, I didn't sell any. I had lots of people interested, and yeah, but they were never enthusiastic to buy from me. And the reality was because I just had this pitch down. You start at the bow, you work to the stern, and you tell them everything about this boat. Well, half of them didn't give a shit about half the stuff that I was telling them. And it wasn't until I realized, hey, one of my managers said to me, you know what? Just talk about what they want. Stop telling them everything there is about the boat. So I looked at it, I said, well, what's important to you? Well, this, and this. Okay, this boat has this, and this. And all of a sudden, wow, I started selling.
Yeah, and then and with housing, with houses, I mean, people want. I mean, you can go out and you point out all the you can point out all the wonderful features of this house, but what they're really looking for is they're looking for a place where they can call home, a place where they can, families where they can build memories, where their kids are going to grow up, or maybe it's and maybe if you're looking at a person that's moving away from a home where their kids have already moved out, you got to recognize that what they're selling is a place that has all their memories.
Yeah,
We have and how you speak to somebody about those things is different, and but recognizing that those emotional tendencies in a person's conversation, are going to affect how they're going to respond to you. So Sonia and I have lived in our condo now for 25 years. All of our grandchildren, this is the only home that they've ever known us to have. It's in a condo, it's in an 18-story building. So they all thought we lived in a really, really big house. They had no idea, they'd come and you live in a really big house, Grandma. But one of the things we did was we have a door into a closet, and on the back of that door is it swings out, and on the back of that door is their measurements. We measured where they are, like as they were growing. So they'd come over to visit Grandma and Grandpa, and Grandma and Grandpa would measure and say, okay, this is how tall you are now. And then as they get older, the boys, they're close to the same age. Well, all of a sudden it's a competition to see who's taller, right? But that's something that if we ever sold this place, I'd have to take that door with me,
of course.
so because it has those memories there, and those are things that we, when we're talking about communication with somebody and connection, with on an emotional level, those are things that we have to recognize how important those types of things are for people. And when we can recognize that and touch that, we're going to be a better, a more effective communicator with
Yeah,
them.
and that's a good point to make. And it all comes down to wanting to understand who they are, so we can add value to them, so that we actually make a difference in in their perspective and their life. And that's really what it comes down to. And a lot of this has to, again, giving you a plug, is understanding personality types and how we can be more impactful to them by understanding what motivates them.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And I thank you for your time today.
Thanks,
And
Doc.
it's been good. And I want you to enjoy New Mexico. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite states to visit. And you've already been around a bit, but take a week and enjoy, relax, kick back, and enjoy the fresh air. You know, the mountain air, the rarefied air.
The rarefied
It's
air, yes, that's the word of the day.
rarefied air. You're much higher elevation than I am here on the coast of British Columbia. So have a good week, Greg, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Don.